Hello everyone, and welcome to my BNB CBS Gossip 24 channel. Steffy warns hope of disaster, will Interrupts Electra and RJ unfolds as a broad, emotionally charged chapter in the ongoing saga of involved commitment, romantic query, and inherited battles that define life at Forrester Creations and beyond, beginning in the familiar yet always combustive setting of the Forrester Exchange, where R.J. Forrester finds himself moping a little longer than usual under the pretense of casual discussion, his attention easily fixed on Electra Forrester as they talk and circle one another with the conditional curiosity of two people who smell an implied pull but are still pretending it doesn't live, and as R.J. asks Electra questions that feel friendly on the face but are still probing, it becomes egregious that he wants to understand not just who she's moment but how she came that person, what she's been through, and whether there's any emotional space left in her life that he might eventually fill, which is why the content inescapably drifts toward Will Spencer and the complicated history that trails behind him like a shadow, particularly the drama-girding Luna Nozawa, a name that still carries weight and pressure despite her absence, and when RJ cautiously brings it up, framing it as concern rather than judgment, Electra hesitates just long enough to reveal that the subject still affects her further than she likes to admit. Because the Luna fire wasn't just gossip or background noise in her relationship with Will, it was a real test of trust, fidelity, and emotional abidance that forced her to defy corridor of herself she didn't know was, and as she explains how destabilizing it was to feel like there was always another woman's presence swimming between them. Indeed, if Will claimed that chapter was closed, RJ listens hardly, his expression softening in a way that suggests empathy but also commodity deeper. A growing conviction that Electra deserves someone whose history doesn't constantly intrude on the present, someone whose life isn't formerly littered with undetermined messes, and although Electra insists that she and Will survived that storm and came out stronger, that the experience proved they could face adversity together, her words sound slightly rehearsed, as though she's repeating a conclusion she's told herself numerous times in order to believe it, and RJ, seeing the cracks beneath the face, gently prodigies audibly whether surviving commodity inescapably means it was healthy, or whether occasionally strength is just endurance incorrect for happiness, a question that lingers in the air long enough to sting, especially because Will Spencer isn't as absent as he appears, watching from near with narrowed eyes and gripped jaw, having caught enough of the discussion to know his relationship is being still deconstructed, and Will's instinct isn't to retreat or reflect but to assert, to make his presence inarguable. So he chooses the most dramatic possible moment to intrude, stepping forward with forced confidence and an unmistakable edge, chatting RJ with polite hostility before turning all his attention to Electra, pulling her close in a way that's meant to be jealous rather than tender, and whether he kisses her outright or simply makes a public show of closeness, the communication is unmistakable. This is his gal, his home, and RJ is crossing a line just by standing too near, and Electra, caught between embarrassment and frustration, doesn't incontinently pull down, which only energies Will's determination to prove commodity, not just to RJ but to himself, and the exchange that follows is laced with thinly veiled dabs and competitive undertones, each youthful man smiling while trading commentary that subtly question the other's motives, character, and annuity, a contest burned not just by Electra but by times of inherited enmity between the Spencer and Forrester families. Because indeed if RJ and Will would no way admit it, they're carrying the weight of their father's feud, with Bill Spencer and Ridge Forrester's long history of clashes, backstabbings, and power struggles echoing through their sons' relations, turning what could have been a simple romantic triangle into a symbol of heritage conflict, and as RJ backs off with forced grace, masking his disappointment behind professionalism, Will is left feeling victorious but unsettled. Because dominance doesn't abolish mistrustfulness, and Electra's quiet discomfort after the scene suggests that public grandstanding may have done further detriment than good, setting the stage for deeper fractures to come as RJ's crush on Electra intensifies and Will's instability grows. While away in Los Angeles, Steffy Forrester Finnegan is dealing with an entirely different kind of brewing disaster, one that feels far more dangerous because it involves her family's safety rather than wounded pride. And her concern centers exactly on her mama, Taylor Hayes, and Taylor's decreasingly complicated connection to Deacon Sharp, a man Steffy has no way trusted and now fears further than ever due to his marriage to Sheila Sharp, whose history of violence, manipulation, and preoccupation has left unforgettable scars on everyone in Steffy's route, and Steffy's anxiety has reached a point where she can no longer keep it to herself, egging her to seek out Hope Logan Spencer for what amounts to a strategic intervention session, because despite their frequently fraught relationship, Steffy knows Hope understands the peril Sheila represents and has influence over Cleric that Steffy herself lacks, and as the two women sit down, Steffy wastes no time laying out her fears in stark terms, painting a picture of ineluctable catastrophe if Taylor continues to let Deacon into her emotional world, reminding Hope that Sheila isn't just unstable but murderous, and that any closeness between Taylor and Deacon could provoke Sheila in changeable and deadly ways. And while Hope listens precisely, her expression reflecting both concern and conflict, Steffy presses harder, emphasizing that this isn't about covetousness or moral judgment but about survival, about precluding a chain response that could end with someone getting seriously hurt or worse, and Steffy's words carry the weight of experience, because she has been Sheila's target. Ahead and knows firsthand how snappily situations escalate when Sheila feels hovered or barred, and Hope, torn between fidelity to her father and fear for Taylor, can't fluently dismiss Steffy's warnings, especially when Steffy frames the issue not as an attack on Deacon's character but as a reality check about the dangerous woman he chose to marry, a woman who sees rivals far and wide and reacts with violence rather than reason. And although Hope originally resists the idea of snooping in her father's life, Steffy's asseveration that inactivity could lead to unrecoverable consequences ultimately breaks through, planting the seed that doing nothing may be the worst choice of all, and as their discussion continues, Steffy makes it clear that she intends to defy Taylor directly as well, because she believes her mama is undervaluing the threat and idealizing a connection that could bring her everything, and the plan that emerges is a disunited approach, with Hope agreeing to go to Deacon's place to appeal to him directly, to prompt him to set boundaries and review how his conduct might jeopardize the people he claims to watch about, while Steffy heads to Taylor's office to deliver a blunt, emotionally charged plea for distance, and when Hope arrives at Deacon's, the atmosphere is tense but familiar, filled with implied history and complicated love, and as Hope looks at her father, she struggles to attune the man who has fought so hard to redeem himself with the reality that he willingly bound himself to Sheila, and as she voices her fears, framing them in terms of Taylor's safety rather than blameworthiness, Cleric bristles defensively at first, averring that Sheila has changed, that he can handle her, that his marriage isn't the ticking time lemon everyone claims it is. But Hope's quiet intensity and turn down to be pacified force him to defy uncomfortable trueness, especially when she asks whether he'd ever forgive himself if Sheila hurt Taylor because he failed to draw a line, and that question lingers long after Hope leaves, planting mistrustfulness where certainty formerly lived, while at the same time Steffy's visit to Taylor is anything but gentle, because Steffy knows her mama too well to cotillion around the issue, and she speaks with urgency and raw fear, telling Taylor outright that relating with Cleric is reckless, that it's inviting Sheila's attention, and that no quantum of nostalgia or emotional comfort is worth the threat, and Taylor, though originally protective, averring that she can take care of herself and that her relations with Cleric are innocent and probative rather than romantic, is visibly shaken by Steffy's intensity, because it's insolvable to dismiss a son who's easily scarified of losing her mama, and as Steffy recounts the numerous times Sheila's covetousness turned violent, the theoretical peril becomes sorrowfully real, forcing Taylor to review whether her belief in boundaries and professionalism is enough to cover her from a woman who doesn't respect either, and by the end of the discussion, no clear resolution is reached, but the warning has been delivered, the lines have been drawn, and all parties are left scuffling with the knowledge that their choices in the coming days could set off a chain of events that cannot be undone, mirroring the undetermined pressure back at Forrester Creations where Electra, Will, and RJ are each nursing private studies and fears, Electra wondering whether Will's possessiveness is a sign of passion or instability, Will questioning whether his public display actually comforted anyone, and RJ floundering with the consummation that wanting someone who belongs to another will only consolidate the peak between him and a Spencer, and as these resemblant stories unfold, they inclusively emphasize a central verity of this moment in the bold and the beautiful macrocosm, that love entangled with undetermined history, dangerous alliances, and inherited battles and frequently remains contained, and that warnings, whether about romantic disaster or physical peril, are frequently issued just as the first unrecoverable way have formerly been taken. The pressure set in stir by these competitions doesn't dissipate overnight, rather, it settles into every corner of the characters' lives, still reshaping exchanges, ganders, and opinions in ways that are insolvable to ignore. At Forrester Creations, the exchange returns to its polished calm on the face, but under, the ripple goods of Will's interruption loiter like static in the air. Electra goes back to her work pretending everything is normal, yet her mind keeps replaying the moment Will pulled her close, the heat of his possessiveness, and the flash of commodity wounded in RJ's eyes before he stepped down. She tells herself that Will was only defending their relationship, that anyone would do the same, but a part of her can't shake the feeling that his response said further about fear than confidence. She remembers RJ's before words, how he didn't charge or push but simply asked whether surviving chaos is the same as choosing happiness, and the question follows her through the rest of the day, resurfacing whenever she catches her reflection in the glass cases or hears Will laughing a little too loudly hard. RJ, for his part, throws himself into work with renewed intensity, determined not to give anyone reason to suppose he's distracted or craving. Still, every sketch he drafts seems to carry traces of Electra's influence, clean lines softened by unanticipated angles, restraint balanced with vulnerability. He knows he's on dangerous ground emotionally, not just because Electra is taken, but because Will Spencer isn't just any rival. He's Bill Spencer's son, and RJ has spent his whole life watching the damage Bill and Ridge foisted on each other through pride, preoccupation, and competition. RJ has always believed he could be different, that he could rise above the family feud, yet standing through from Will, feeling that old, familiar hostility flare without trouble, makes him realize how deeply hardwired those patterns are. The idea unsettles him further than he cares to admit, because it suggests that no matter how good his intentions, he may be fated to repeat history. Will senses the shift as well. After his dramatic display, he expects to feel triumphant, reassured, but rather he's restless. He notices the way Electra grows quieter around him, how her grins don't relatively reach her eyes when he jokes about RJ or makes light of the situation. He tries to move himself that RJ is the problem, that if RJ would just stay in his lane everything would settle down, yet deep down he knows that wouldn't fix the real issue. The Luna Nozawa chapter may be closed in his mind, but he can't deny that it left scars on Electra, on their relationship, and on his own sense of worth. Seeing RJ here to Electra with similar focused attention stirred an instability Will allowed. He'd formerly conquered, and rather of addressing it actually, he chose dominance. Now he's left wondering whether that choice will bring him further than it defended. As days pass, the contest between Will and RJ becomes less subtle. Their relations grow sharper, comments more pointed, and associates begin to notice the turnabout of hostility. What starts as professional disagreement over designs or donations snappily escalates into particular home, each man pushing just enough to provoke a response without crossing an egregious line. Electra finds herself caught in the middle, frustrated by the pressure and decreasingly apprehensive that her presence seems to amplify it. She tries to talk to Will about it one evening, gently suggesting that his feud with RJ is getting unhealthy, but Will bristles, criminating her of taking RJ's side. The argument doesn't explode, but it leaves behind a cold distance that feels more dangerous than crying, because it signals issues neither of them knows how to resolve. While the youngish generation wrestles with contest and romantic query, the stakes remain far advanced for Steffy, Hope, Taylor, and Cleric. Hope's discussion with Cleric continues to hang her long after she leaves his place. She tells herself she did the right thing by speaking up, but the look on her father's face, hurt mixed with guard, plays on reprise in her mind. Deacon's asseveration that Sheila has changed clashes violently with Hope's recollections of everything Sheila has done, and she worries that her father's need for love and acceptance is bedazzling him to the peril. At the same time, Hope struggles with guilt, knowing that pushing Cleric down from Sheila could unravel the fragile stability he's worked so hard to make. The conflict gnaws at her, leaving her emotionally exhausted and uncertain whether intervention will cover her family or fracture it further. Cleric, left alone after Hope's visit, paces his living room replaying her words. He tells himself that everyone deserves an alternate chance, that he of all people understands what it means to be judged by one's miscalculations. Yet indeed as he defends Sheila in his studies, he can't ignore the knot forming in his stomach at the idea of Taylor Hayes being caught in the crossfire. Cleric knows Sheila's temper, her possessiveness, and her capacity for preoccupation better than anyone, indeed if he refuses to label it as dangerous. Hope's question, whether he could live with himself if Sheila hurt Taylor, cuts deeper than he anticipated, because the honest answer scares him. For the first time since marrying Sheila, Deacon allows himself to imagine a script where love is enough to control chaos. Meanwhile, Steffy's battle with Taylor leaves her emotionally raw. She hates feeling like the alarmist son, the bone, who sees pitfalls far and wide, but she also knows that ignoring her instincts has nearly bring her life ahead. Taylor's calm asseveration that she can manage her relationship with Cleric frustrates Steffy, because it echoes the same underestimation of Sheila that others have made time and again. Still, Steffy senses that her words landed, that indeed if Taylor wouldn't admit it, mistrustfulness has been planted. That knowledge offers little comfort, because mistrustfulness alone wouldn't stop Sheila if she decides to act. Taylor spends the night after Steffy's visit gaping at her office walls, reflecting on her own provocations. She tells herself that her connection with Cleric is embedded in participated history and collective understanding, not love, but when she's honest, she recognizes the comfort she finds in him, the ease of being seen without judgment. That comfort now feels tainted by the peril Steffy described. Taylor prides herself on rationality and emotional intelligence, yet she can't deny that Sheila sharp defies sense. The consummation forces Taylor to defy an uncomfortable verity. Professional boundaries and good intentions may not cover her from someone who operates outside moral and social morals. As these grown-ups grapple with their fears, Sheila remains largely unseen but far from inactive. She senses the shift in Deacon, the vacillation, the guarded tone, the subtle emotional pullout, and it feeds her paranoia. Sheila has spent her life interpreting distance as treason, and indeed without concrete substantiation, she begins to imagine adversaries far and wide. Taylor's name shells constantly in her studies, a symbol of everything Sheila fears losing: respectability, acceptance, and Deacon's attention. Though she tells herself she trusts Deacon, her conduct suggests else, and those around her know too well what happens when Sheila feels hovered. Back at Forrester Creations, Electra eventually reaches a breaking point. After another tense exchange between Will and RJ, she pulls Will away and demands an honest discussion. She tells him she feels suffocated by his need to prove commodity, that his contest with RJ is overshadowing their relationship. Will originally deflects, averring RJ is manipulating the situation, but Electra doesn't back down. She admits that while she loves Will, she's tired of feeling like she has to constantly assure him, tired of defending their relationship against ghosts from the history. Her honesty catches Will out guard, forcing him to defy the possibility that his instability, not RJ, is the real trouble. RJ, observing their simulated dynamic from a distance, feels a blend of guilt and craving. He no way intended to come between Electra and Will, yet he can't deny that part of him hopes their cracks widen. The consummation unsettles him, because it conflicts with his tone image as someone principled and fair. He confides in a close family member, admitting his passions and his fear of getting exactly like the men before him who let contest define their choices. The concession doesn't bring relief, but it does bring clarity. RJ knows he must decide whether to step back fully or risk everything by following his heart. As days turn into weeks, the connected pressures begin to meet. Deacon's growing apprehension leads him to set subtle boundaries with Sheila, who incontinently senses the change. Taylor, heeding Steffy's warning further than she admits, starts to limit her relations with Cleric, creating a distance that neither of them finds easy. Hope watches these shifts anxiously, apprehensive that indeed well-intentioned distance can provoke insecurity when Sheila is involved. Steffy, ever watchful, prepares herself for fallout, knowing from experience that calm frequently precedes catastrophe. In the youngish circle, Will's attempts to recapture control only push Electra further down, while RJ's restraint becomes decreasingly delicate to maintain. One unanticipated moment, an honest discussion, a participated laugh, a quiet understanding, threatens to undo weeks of careful distance. When Will walks in on such a moment, the pressure reaches a new peak, and the battle that follows is raw and undressed, stripping down polite contest and exposing deep-seated resentment, fear, and desire. Words are said that can't be taken back, lines crossed that review connections ever. By the time the dust begins to settle, nothing looks the same. Trust has been shaken, alliances tested, and warnings ignored or only half-heeded. What becomes clear to everyone involved is that they're standing on the edge of unrecoverable change. Whether it manifests as heartache, treason, or commodity far more dangerous remains uncertain, but one verity is inarguable: the disasters Steffy advised about and the battles burned in the Forrester exchange are no longer academic. They're unfolding in real time, driven by love, fear, and the turndown to let go of the history, setting the stage for consequences that will ripple through their lives long after this chapter closes.